share my screen and talk about my work. So let's get this started. All right. I think, let me know. Hey, Alex, let me know if you can see my screen.
We can.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. So let me just play from the start. Okay, awesome. So as Alex said and already introduced me, I'm Garrett, and I graduated from GW in 2018 with a major in international relations and a minor in Japanese language and literature. A little bit more about me. I studied, well, in addition to my studies, I also worked doing photography, which is something I was interested in since high school. Um, and I worked on my school's newspaper, and my freshman year, I really enjoyed doing photography. And so this opportunity came up where I could intern in Israel. So I joined this program and was able to intern in Israel for a few months, which was a great experience. And I will show you some pictures from that. And then I will go into my time when I was able to go to the White House and photograph a press conference. And I'll speak about my fashion photography and probably bring my mom on as well because she works with me. And then talk about modeling agencies and then go into a little bit more technicality with photography. So awesome. Here we go. All right. So here are my photos from Israel. I'll start with this one. This was at the Western Wall. A great part about my internship was that they were like super Israeli and they're just like, do whatever you want. We know that you are like new to this country, so like travel as much as you can and take as many photos as you can. So I spent a lot of my time just traveling around with friends or alone and just photographing the city, especially the old city in Jerusalem. There's so much to photograph there. And so this was the Western Wall, and I think this was actually a homeless man. But he was there like every day. And you can see all those like pieces of paper that are literally falling out of the wall. Because probably a lot of you know that you like write your wishes and whatnot and stick them in the wall or pray. So most likely this man's praying. So in addition to being in Israel, I also ventured into the West Bank as well. And this was in Hebron. I'm not too sure what was going on there. I just snapped a picture when I was in the city. But there was a lot going on. And so I don't really know. I can't say for sure what's going on, unfortunately. I wish I had more insight. But this photo actually won, I think it was a finalist in the Nashville Arts competition a few years ago, which was pretty cool. For the Nashville Arts magazine. And again, that's in the city of Hebron. And yeah, you can see that there's like a duality division going on there. And yeah. So this is at right on top of the Western Wall. There's this holy site in Islam, and it's the Dome of the Rock. I believe it's called. And it's a really, really holy place for in Islam, and you have to be Muslim to go in. So I unfortunately wasn't able to go in and see what it looks like inside, but a lot of people probably recognize this iconic dome. You can see it when you enter Jerusalem, and it's pretty much in all the pictures. But it was really interesting because in Jerusalem, it's such a diverse place in terms of religion. A lot of people may think of Jerusalem and just think of Judaism, but there's all these different sects of Christianity and Islam and Judaism, and it's interesting because there's such a it's weirdly blended, but it's not. They're still very separated, but I feel like these pictures kind of show all the different religions going on in Israel, the West Bank, and wherever else in the area. So again, this is also in Jerusalem. This is in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. which is a really interesting church. It's divided into different parts, and different sects of Christianity control the different parts of the church. So you'll have like an Armenian Christian part, and then I think like a Orthodox Christian part. It's really interesting. And there are a lot of like nuns and people coming and making almost like a pilgrimage. So that is a photo from that as well. I'm not exactly sure what they're doing here, or what they're talking about, but I feel like it's a tender moment between two people in the church. And so this is an Armenian priest. It was interesting because they had like these different Armenian like ceremonies going on sometimes, and they're really interesting. And I felt like they were really different from like the other parts of the church. And actually, speaking of Armenians, I think Kim Kardashian had her child baptized at this church. But yeah, that's an Armenian priest. He was pretty cool looking. I also think this photo, if I'm correct, won a top 10 maybe in the National Arts Competition a few years ago. So that was pretty cool. Okay, so moving on from Israel after that, my sophomore year, it's funny, my mom actually sat next to someone on the plane coming back from visiting me at GW who worked at the White House.
No.
Oh, apparently that's not what happened.
I was in the White House doing my.
She was at the White House doing, sorry, she's in the next room, but she was at the White House and she made a contact with someone who worked there, basically.
Because I do the observer.
And so she was able to talk to this person who I believe also went to GW. And the woman found out that I do photography, and she was like, oh, well, Garrett can come and get a press pass and like take photos at the White House as well, which was pretty cool. So I ended up applying for a press pass and was able to go. And yeah, so I'll get into this in 2 seconds and show you some pictures. The whole process was really interesting. So this was back in 2016, maybe right before the Obama administration left the White House. Yeah, so here's the first photo. This was right after the 2016 Paris attacks. President Hollande, Francois Hollande from France came, and they did this whole briefing, and I guess to show more unity between the US and France. And so this is a picture of Obama. And yeah, so the next slide is a picture of both Obama and Hollande. And yeah, they were just talking, and it was really interesting because there's so many people and languages. And it was really interesting too, because I believe Hollande was speaking only in French, and I think the president now, so Macron of France right now, he speaks English really well because he also came to GW one year and spoke to us in English. But anyways, I think they had him speaking in, I think Hollande was speaking in French, and they were translating into like everyone's earpieces. And it was really interesting to see because I feel like not a lot of people really like take into consideration like how they translate on the spot. So this is behind the scenes. It's Jim Acosta from CNN on the left, and I don't know the other two people on the right. But there was a lot of there are a lot of reporters, and it was just kind of chaotic behind the scenes because when I first entered the White House, like right before I was entering, there was like 3 layers of security. They had to like scan me like 3 times and scan my camera equipment. And then we're pushed into this small, tiny, cramped room. And then all of a sudden, everyone just like rushes into the like press area, and it's really chaotic. And this is also another scene from behind the scenes as well. All these people are just taking photos. And it's like, as soon as the president comes on like the little podium and platform, all you hear is like the clicking sounds of cameras, and you literally have people from every single press organization there. And it's like, you really cannot move. And the important people are all in the front, and they're like, do you know who I am? Like, I'm from like CNN, like I need to be in front. And it's like this whole like weird, like, dance of, I don't even know, press going on in the back, and nobody can move, and people are trying to get to the front and be silent, and it's a lot. So yeah, that was when I went there. And so those pictures were from 2016. So now I'm going to start talking about my fashion photography, because I kind of segued post-graduation. I was like, I love photojournalism and all, but I didn't feel like I had so much creativity in what I photographed in photojournalism, because it's like, in photojournalism, it's all about like really portraying what you see on the spot then and there. While in fashion photography, there's more leeway to create what you want. And especially if you work for like a newspaper or another news outlet, you really have to be like dead on like point on what you're conveying, and you have to be as truthful and as transparent in what you're photographing. So in like photography and fashion, you're able to like Photoshop and work with colors and editing, and there's just, I feel like, more creativity in what you set up and create, while in photojournalism, it's all about just being like what's on the opposite end of the camera lens. So coming up, I'll start talking about my fashion photography, which I really started in probably right after I graduated, because I came home and I was like, I really want to get more into fashion, because I've always had an interest in it, or I always had an interest in it. And I knew I loved photographing people. And so I really was exploring like, how do I get into this? Because I also had been like photographing my friends, and I found out I really liked doing that and working with them, and just like creating whatever we wanted together, and working with other people. And yeah, so I knew I liked that. And when I came back home, I began contacting local modeling agencies and photographing their models. And then I kind of roped in my mom, because she had experience in the fashion world growing up. And she was a designer in New York. So I roped her into it after the first few shoots, and then we both became hooked. And she would style and I would shoot. So this first photo is one of the first shoots I did with a model. Her name is Stella Claire, and she is a model from a, I guess, semi-local agency. I'll talk about modeling agencies a bit later, and about what they mean, but basically she's with a mother agent, and they kind of prep these models and then send them out to like New York or overseas or wherever, just get them ready for the modeling industry while they're younger. So anyways, my mom styled this. She literally made that entire outfit, and I took the photo. Yeah, so it says Vogue on it because Vogue Italia has this online submission website where for like photographers can upload and submit their photographs, and if the editorial team likes them, they'll be published on the website. So that photo is from the Vogue Italia submission website, which is cool because I've had a few photos on that as well. And it's just a good way for photographers to show their work, and hopefully other people to see their work as well. So this is a shoot I did right before COVID really became widespread, and I was still in New York. She was with a modeling agency called Red Models, which is now Maryland Agency. They are an agency based in New York, but primarily Paris. And her name is Bree. And that also got on the Vogue Italia website through submission, but I also got her in another editorial, which I'll also talk about in a few minutes, what editorials are. But so yeah, she is from New York. And I was photographing when I was also working at a corporate job for Hunter Boots. And my mom flew up and styled this. So all those clothes are just like a mix of like new and vintage, which is pretty cool. And that's an older photo I took probably in 2018 or 2019. He's with a local agency, and he ended up moving to New York and getting signed there as well. His name is Tommy. And I think he's wearing like a Lanvin shirt. And I feel like this photo is pretty iconic, in my opinion. Let me know. Hey, Alex, are you able to see this photo?
No.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so the next photo is Ireland. If you all are seeing it as well, it should be a girl in this kind of like houndstooth dress. So that was also on the Vogue Italia website. She's in a handmade knit dress and Stuart Weitzman shoes. And that is not a lunchbox, as a lot of people like to think it is. It's a sewing kit. So yeah. And then this is from a recent shoot I did this summer outside with a girl named Abby. She goes to Vanderbilt, and she goes to Vanderbilt, and she signed with IMG in New York, which some people may have heard of, which is a modeling agency up there and worldwide. And it's really cool because I feel like the modeling agency, the modeling world is so small, and the fashion industry is so small that everyone knows everyone in a way. So like her agents know so many people that I know, and it's really connected, which is really cool. And it's a really great way to bond with people. So this is another photo from New York, which was also on the Vogue Italia website. And her name is Elaine. She's originally from Georgia. If you're in Georgia, please go vote today. It's the last day to vote. But anyways, regardless, again, I'm wearing that shirt right now. So you have a visual of what it looks like on me. And yeah, so she's wearing a scarf in that, and my shirt that I'm wearing. And this was taken on film. I don't necessarily use a lot of film. I like to use digital. It's a bit easier for me to manipulate. And I'll talk about that in a bit as well. So moving on to editorials, a lot of photographers will like to submit their photos to editorials, whether the editorial team from a magazine approaches them to do a specific shoot, or a photographer online goes and submits work to a magazine. This one was submitted online to a magazine called Lucy's Magazine. And I actually took this by myself. I styled him in all my clothes. And yeah, this was in New York in 2019, I believe. But yeah, so I took a bunch of photos of him. His name is Wes. And we were in my mom's friend from high school's, Andrea's house / apartment, right above Washington Square Park. It was like on 12th Street and 5th Ave almost. I think it was like between like 5th and 6th. But anyways, so I was in her apartment and took these photos, and then we went over to Dumbo, which is in Brooklyn, and went outside and took some photos as well. And here's more of that. But yeah, so for photographers, if they have like a story, usually for editorials, they require at least 4 different looks / outfits, at least. Usually it's like 4 to 6. And they're really particular because it has to fit the vibe of their magazine. So it can be like really frustrating to keep submitting, and keep finding the right fit can be a little hard, but once it's done, it's worth it. And especially if the magazines have a large following online, then it reaches a lot of people, which is really great. But it's interesting because Wes is also from Nashville, but he is also signed to New York. So I think we'd been following each other on Instagram, and then he was like, "Hey, I'm in New York. Do you want to shoot?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." So yeah, some more photos from that. So then this is another editorial with Brie, the one I showed you earlier. Usually post-editorial, when the editorial is like publicized and whatnot, you have a few months, and depending on the magazine, like you can, if it's an exclusive for that magazine, then you can't post it anywhere else. You can't submit it to anywhere else for an editorial, but sometimes, depending on the magazine, you can submit to multiple magazines. It just really depends, given a span of a few months. So after this was done, a few months later, I submitted that photo to Vogue Italia's editorial team, and they put it on their website. But this is from Fienf magazine, which is a Parisian magazine. It's an online primarily, but they also do print. And also Lucy's is also online and in print too. So this was done in Dumbo. I was able to use a studio space in Dumbo. So some of it is in studio and outside. And I'll also talk about kind of the technicality of that in a bit as well. So you guys can just like look at the photos while I go through. And then that's from online only editorial that I did called Desnudo Italia.
She's wearing Rita Heller's dress.
Oh, so my mom really wants me to tell you guys that Brie, a few slides back, which is actually right here now, is wearing Reva Heller's dress, a member of the JCC. On this, let me see if I can zoom in. I guess I can't, but on the right, she's wearing Reva Heller's dress. So my mom really wants me to say that to you guys. So, all right. Anyways, back to this one. This is from an online magazine called Desnudo Italia. I think they're based in LA, even though it says Italia. I think he has a partner, the guy who runs that division of the magazine in Italy. But I actually really like them because they have some pretty cool fashion and stuff. So I was able to submit to there and got some photos of that online. This was also taken in February before the pandemic hit. I flew back to Nashville and did this, which is actually right behind my house and in my house. I was able to set up studio space here. And yes, he has a golf club. And those are some vintage clothes from Israel and around the world. And I think he's wearing a Christian Dior jacket underneath his overcoat jacket. Yeah, he is. So that's pretty cool. And my mom made the jewelry, that Louis Vuitton. Well, she bought the Louis Vuitton golf ball, but she turned it into a necklace. Okay, so moving on to the technicalities that I was talking about a lot earlier. I'll start by actually talking about modeling agencies. So I guess that's not really a technicality, but if when shooting models, like people have to deal with modeling agencies. So they're two different, let me actually stop sharing and I can just talk with the video. Cool. So when dealing with modeling agencies, there's a few different types of modeling agencies. There's like a mother agent, which you'll find a lot in like cities that aren't LA or New York, because there's not really fashion work in Nashville. It's all pretty much based out of New York, LA, in major cities like Paris, Milan. So what these mother agents do is they scout locally, and they'll develop their models and then send them out to bigger agencies when they're ready to work. So usually they'll scout them when they're younger, send them on local shoots maybe, and then when they turn 18, they can start working, which is a really big thing recently is that models need to really be 18 to start working. Before, it used to be like you could be like 12 and be walking on the runways, which is like not okay anymore, which is good. Because it's weird to have 12-year-olds like wearing clothing that like adult women and men would be wearing. And I think there's still maybe some of that, but it's really frowned upon and it's not common anymore at all. Most models are over the age of 18, as they should be. But yeah, so anyways, these mother agents, as they're called, will develop these models, send them out to larger agencies. And some of the larger agencies that you've probably heard of are like IMG Next. And yeah, photographers usually develop relationships with agents at these agencies, and they'll hook them up with shooting models. So in Nashville, I started working with a lot of mother agencies. And then when I moved to New York, they connected me to their contacts at these larger agencies, and I was able to work with them. But every photographer's journey is different with that, I believe, too. One of my friends, he used to sneak into fashion shows and met a lot of people there. And now he like does work for like Marc Jacobs and Miu Miu and whatnot. So there's just different ways that people meet people in the industry. There's not like a one size fits all for that. But anyways, so past the modeling agencies, doing fashion photography, and then just doing photography in general is a people person job. So it's really important to be able to connect with the subject you're working on, or the subject you're working with. I think it's important to connect with that person, because any kind of uncomfortable or kind of like stagnant air is going to be caught on film. So like if the model's feeling uncomfortable or tense, it'll also be shown on screen. So it's really important to kind of just really get to know the model and the people you're working with, and kind of create this relaxed atmosphere so that everyone's relaxed and the photos can turn out well. Because post edit, when I'm going through the photos, I can tell what photos are tense and what photos are not, or what photos the model's tense in. Usually in the beginning, the first few like photos are like always like a little like tense, and the model, I can tell, is like kind of not really into it yet. But there comes to a point, and it's usually towards the end of the shoot, when the model just like finally relaxes and everyone's just tired, and the photos just like turn out really well. Because I feel like it's just like this dropping point where people are like, oh yes, finally, but I'm about to leave and go eat or something, which is weird because it always like, those are like the best photos, the final ones. And so moving on to now more technicalities like camera settings and studio lighting and editing. So for the camera, a lot of people that I talk to, they're like, oh, I don't even know how like one gets from using automatic to manual. When I first started doing photography, especially in college, they're like, you cannot use automatic, just like whatever you do, do not use automatic. So it was kind of like teaching myself, which this whole journey pretty much has been in photography, is teaching myself and finding out how to do things on my own. And I feel like I almost have learned a lot more that way than I would sitting in a class, but who knows? I mean, I've actually never taken a photography class. So yeah, I was able to figure out everything on my own, watch a lot of YouTube videos, read a lot of articles about how to like use manual, which I don't even know how I used automatic in the first place, because I hate automatic. So automatic is like on a camera where you just have the auto settings, like you just take a picture and like you don't think about it. Most people use automatic when they take a photo. Like for example, like your iPhone, if you take a picture, like let me show you, I don't know if you can see, like, hey, if you take a photo, you just press this, that's automatic. It's computing all the settings for you. It doesn't know what it's really doing though. It does, but it doesn't. It just kind of guesses at what the best lighting is. But in manual, you have the ability to choose what settings you put the camera on and how much light you want to come in, and like the depth of field. So if you've ever seen a photo and the back is like blurry, Let me actually see if I can share my screen again and go to my PowerPoint. Let's see, let's go back because I'd like to give a visual. So here on the photo on the left, the screen is a little bit, or the background is a little bit blurred. And so there's this thing called aperture, and it controls the depth of field. So the lower your aperture, the more blur there's going to be on the background. And so if you have a lower aperture, like the entire background might be blurry, and even part of the model might be blurry. So just playing around with different settings like that. Let me see another photo. Yeah, I think I have a high aperture on most of these, but yeah, I do. Yeah, so just depending on what is going on, what you want to control and what you want to portray, you can control that with your manual settings, which I found a lot better and a lot more fun to work with. And there's a lot more creativity there. And every photographer should probably know that and learn how to do manual, because there's just so much more control and there's so much more you can do than automatic. And it may be a little bit scary at first, but it's definitely worth it to learn because it'll only help you in the long run. So moving on to lighting. Lighting, I was like very resistant to lighting because I thought it was so scary at first. And I mean, I'm still learning how to do lighting, and a lot of photographers don't even know how to do their own lighting. I have photographer friends in New York that just pay people to do lighting for them. But I think it's important to learn at least how to do a little bit of lighting, because it just gives the photographer more control over the look and kind of the scene and the mood, because lighting can really make a picture more dramatic. It can make it more literally light. And so then there comes a point where it's like, do I want to use natural lighting? Do I want to use artificial lighting? And it really depends. So let me show you a picture to give you an idea of what lighting, natural lighting versus kind of artificial lighting looks like. So let's go here, share. So this photo, all these photos from that editorial, Lucy's Magazine editorial, was all natural lighting. And editing comes in, which I'll get to in a second. It's a big part of that as well. But these are all natural lighting, just so you can have a feel. I believe it was cloudy that day. And so cloudy days are pretty great actually for taking photos, because if you ever think about like how you look directly into the sun, it's like super strong. That also correlates and translates onto a photo. So like the sunlight will like really overpower an image, especially at noon when it's like right on top of the person. It's like the worst lighting ever. Most photographers don't like to start when the sun is like right at peak, because it just really is not great unless it's like a cloudy day like this, because the clouds act as a sort of softbox and diffuse the light, so it spreads evenly and isn't as harsh. So instead of getting this really huge direct ray of sun, you have really diffuse and really soft lighting, which is great here. Not so great for taking pictures indoors, but definitely taking pictures outside. It's really great for that. So then if we go back here to this photo of Bree, this is in a studio. This is artificial lighting. And I think it's just one light. And so indoor lighting is really, it's fun to play around with. It can be a pain though. The more lights that are added into a shoot, the more difficult it can become. And it gets really expensive, because indoor lighting, it really can start to rack up in the dollars. I think like a lighting, like a decent light, like studio light is probably, without like the umbrella or anything else that you add on top of it, is like a few $100s, and they can get to a few $1,000s. So it's important to really research and find out what you're buying. But anyways, this is just with one light. Honestly, one light is great. There's so much you can do with it, especially if you have like different like things you can bounce light off of, which is an interesting thing to do, to play around with light. If you have like a whiteboard or anything white is going to bounce the light really easily. So if you're in a small space and you use one light, the light will bounce. And conversely, if you use like a blackboard or something black, the light will be absorbed and won't bounce. So I don't know if you've ever seen photographers with those like reflectors. Reflectors are a great way to reflect light, and they get the job done. And so going back to this photo, I know I took this outside, but I think I used a little bit of my own lighting outside too. I have a battery that I bring, and I can take photos outside with the studio light. So studio lighting can be brought outside, and it gives interesting pictures because sometimes the sun, if it's a little too strong, it can create really harsh shadows, and it really kind of destroys the picture in a way, because it's like the shadows are so harsh. I mean, unless that's like the style you're going for, but the shadows can be really harsh. So if you use a studio light, you can kind of overpower the sun in a way and kind of create more evenly lit photos, which is what I believe I did here. Also, I think I took this photo right before golden hour, when the sun is starting to go down. So for anyone that really likes to take photos outside, or maybe doesn't have access to studio lighting, naturally lit, like golden hour, like 3 p.m. onwards, is a great time to go outside and take photos, because the sun isn't as strong and it doesn't create as like harsh of a shadow as it would at like noon. Also, when the sun is like, actually I have a light right here so I can show you. So if you think about this, if you can see this, this light is above my head. So imagine this at like, as like sunlight at directly at noon. It's going to be like right here, and it's going to create like some pretty like harsh lighting directly above me, and it's pretty ugly. But if you put the light like right here, this isn't a studio light, this is just like a regular light. If you put the lighting right here, it like is on an angle and it's a bit lower, and it makes the light more diffuse. So that's just like an example of like the sun. So it starts here and creates a really ugly image. Nobody really likes to have their photo taken like this, like with like a flashlight above your face. And then kind of moves like this, and it gets a little bit softer, and it's a little bit nicer. So yeah. So for studio versus like natural light, it's a little bit on that. And then editing. So what all photographers like have to learn is Photoshop and Lightroom, because that can save photos. There's so many times where I've had photos that I'm like, I can't use these, and I go into Lightroom and I edit the colors, and it turns out to be a great photo. So for example, these photos, because I didn't have studio lighting here, I went on Photoshop and Lightroom and altered the photos to be a little bit more evenly lit, because you can control the lighting in Photoshop. I wouldn't recommend doing that though. I think it'd be better for people to like kind of before post make the scene as like evenly lit as possible, or kind of get that preferred lighting, because it's leaving it up to chance going in at the final hour and then trying to edit. And also like turning a photo from like color to black and white can save a photo sometimes, because sometimes it looks weird in color and then sometimes it looks cool in black and white. But people will have more control to create kind of like cooler images. I don't have a before and after, just because I didn't want to do that to some models. But most photos that you see in magazines are edited. And unless it's like France or something where they have to say like this photo has been edited in Photoshop or something, most photos will be edited and people won't know. And that's what makes a good photographer and editing team, is that they're so well edited that people don't know. So for like different models, I think it's really important to not over edit, because then it just kind of looks a little bit fake, unless that's like the look you're going for. I think especially in fashion photography, it's important to kind of look kind of as natural as possible. So whether that's like removing blemishes or just editing the colors, it's important to stay natural. I know like filters on Snapchat, like kind of, or Snapchat, Instagram, wherever, they can really smooth over the skin, and it can create like such a weird image because people can tell like that has been highly edited. Sometimes on beauty campaigns, they edit a little bit too much. Like if you walk into a Sephora, it's like these people have no pores like at all. And it's weird because it's like, right, the editing team does it pretty well though, because it's not like so like blurred out. But sometimes it's like kind of like, whoa. So anyways, getting ideas for photography is another thing that is pretty important. Sometimes I can stop sharing really quickly. Okay. Getting ideas is really important. I feel like you can get inspiration from anywhere, whether that be online, from real life, like dreams, anywhere. There's no limit on where people can get their like inspiration from. And sometimes it's fun to work with a model and just kind of create on the spot and just go with what their best vibe is, which is interesting because when models go and get casted for different like editorials and runways and getting fit for designers, that's what they look for, is they look for inspiration in the model, because they want a model that best fits their look and their brand. And sometimes it's really hard to tell from photos what someone's look is. Okay, so I guess I went over a little bit, and sorry, I feel like if anyone has questions, please ask me now.
I have a question
Okay.
If anyone does have questions. So if anyone here is looking to not be a fashion photographer, but just looking to like take really almost professional or, nice photos of like, their grandchildren, what's a good basic camera to get, or like style of camera to get, or what do you recommend doing if someone just has like an iPhone?
So iPhones are getting pretty good, actually. So the more like, if you have like the iPhone Pro, I think I just have like the regular one, like the iPhone 11. It just has 2 cameras. But if you have the one with 3 cameras, like that's just like another step up. So iPhones can be pretty good.
Our audience doesn't.
What? Most of the audience doesn't?
Our audience does not.
Okay, so I would recommend not using your phone if you don't have a good camera on your phone, because those will just end up looking kind of blurred. I mean, they won't be the best photos, basically. The newer iPhones usually have good cameras, and I think you could try to control them manually. But a good camera, I'm a Canon kind of guy. I don't know why. I've just always had Canon cameras. There's like Canon, Nikon, Sony. So whatever camera best fits them, it'll take a little bit of research. But I know the Canon Rebel series, it's called, is a good beginner camera. And I'd really recommend starting and just taking photos of anything and everything, and using it in manual mode. Actually, I think I can go grab my camera and show you what I mean by manual mode really quickly. If I have that, I'll be right back.
Okay. Well, I'm here. Everyone check your email, by the way. I sent you some very helpful information, hopefully, about
Right.
the vaccine. Okay.
Sorry, just had to grab this. If you can see, like, there's different settings. The M is for manual. So if you ever see that, that means manual.
I never knew that before, actually. I just move it around.
Yeah, so there's different settings. There's too much to go into right now, what everything means, but usually the M is for manual. That little green is like auto, but it's really, do a little bit of research, I think, on your own, and kind of learn what everything means, and then start using it regardless of whether or not the photos look good, because that'll really, in the end, save you, because um, the photos will end up looking really better once you have like the ability to control what you want, in my opinion. I mean, I could be wrong.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah.
I also wanted to know, last chance for questions for our audience. But when you first did you? I know you said you have no formal photography training, but when you first started at GW, were you already taking photos, and were you thinking of doing something like the White House? Like, you were an international relations major, right? So
Yeah. So I started in the newspaper. Because when I joined GW, I needed to like, or excuse me, when I started GW, I needed to join like an organization to get more involved in like in the student community. So I joined the student newspaper, called the GW Hatchet, and I was taking photos for them for a few years. Um, and so, yeah. So sorry, what was the question you asked?
well, it was just like, were you thinking of doing like photojournalism, or like how did you go from
Oh yeah. So
that to fashion?
I knew I liked photos, taking photos of people. I just didn't really know what direction I wanted to go into, and I felt like fashion photography gave me the most creativity. In the end, photojournalism was, I felt like, a little. It's still interesting and fun, but it felt like it kind of lacked that extra like umph of creativity, because I felt like it was a lot of just like me going in or going somewhere and just taking photos of like a professor or like some notable person, and then leaving. There wasn't any like sense of wonder and like fantasy that I could put into that. It was kind of just like you're there and you get what you have. Like you just have to translate whatever you see directly in front of you onto the screen, then like give it to the editor. There was no like building a set, building like editing post-op, and like doing cool things in Photoshop. Um, it was just like, okay, there's a person, try to make this as interesting as I can, then leave. Which, I mean, I think in the end taught me a little bit about like trying to get creative with what I have, but at the same time, I just felt like I wanted something more.
Good to know. Okay, well, it doesn't look like there are any questions now. But Garrett, you're looking for a new job now, right?
Yeah.
So sell yourself. Like, is there anything, can you do like an elevator pitch if anyone is watching and they're like,
So I'm not a business student, so I've never really practiced an elevator pitch before. But if anyone's looking to hire someone with a lot of assistant experience, I was previously working at Hunter Boots, the rain boot company in New York, as an executive assistant to the vice president. So if anyone has any like connections within the fashion industry or kind of creative industries that is looking to hire someone, I have a lot of experience. And I also worked at the Embassy of Japan in DC. So it's not just stuck in fashion, it's also politics and whatnot too. I'll send you my resume.
Oh, sorry. That was good. I put you on the spot, and that was a great answer. Are you willing to relocate?
Yeah, willing to relocate anywhere, except maybe like not Europe or Asia.
So you're willing to relocate anywhere that is Europe or Asia.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
America, Europe, or Asia.
Oh, America, Europe. Okay, got it. Okay, well, thank you, Garrett. This was really interesting. I feel like I learned a lot actually about photography and about your background. I'm sorry that your mom did not come and sit on the couch next to you. I know that she's in the background dying to get in there.
Yeah. But, so also before we go, I just wanted to give everyone my website. So I don't know. It's just www.garrettmills.com, GarrettTTMills. So it's Garrett with 2 R's and 2 T's, garrettmills.com. And also my Instagram is at Garesai, GARESAI.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Garrett.
Yeah, thank you, Alex.
Happy New Year.